I used to think rejection was the ultimate pain, but I was wrong. The worst pain was hearing my father look at my 17-year-old son and say he did not belong here. That night, while we slept in our car, his other daughter enjoyed a 5-bedroom house, but everything changed when my grandmother walked into that birthday party clutching an old leather briefcase, ready to finally expose the truth and silence him for good. My name is Natalie Kelly. I am 37 years old, and 3 weeks ago, my father looked at my life and decided it was trash. I used to think the worst thing a parent could do was leave. I was wrong. The worst thing a parent can do is stay just close enough to remind you that you are not worth saving. The gear shift of my 10-year-old sedan was digging into my ribs. That was the first thing I felt when I woke up. The second thing was the cold. It is a specific kind of cold that settles inside a car when the engine has been off for 6 hours. A damp, heavy chill that smells like stale breath and floor mats. We were parked in the back corner of the Riverview Plaza lot, tucked behind a dumpster so the security patrol would not spot the fogged-up windows. I shifted, trying to pull my coat tighter without waking the boy next to me. Miles was 17. He was curled up in the passenger seat, his long legs cramped against the dashboard, his head resting against the cold glass. He was too big for this. He was too good for this. His phone alarm vibrated against the plastic cup holder. 4:30 in the morning. Miles moved instantly. He did not groan. He did not complain. He just sat up, rubbed his face with his palms, and reached for the bottle of water we kept to wash our faces. "Morning, Mom," he whispered, his voice rough with sleep. "Morning, baby," I said, hating that I had nothing else to give him but a greeting. He started getting ready for his shift at Beancraft Coffee. I watched him in the rearview mirror as he fixed his hair, checking frantically for any sign that he had slept in a Toyota Camry. He was terrified of smelling like homelessness. He was terrified that his manager would notice his shirt was wrinkled or that his eyes were too heavy. He needed this job. We needed the money. But more than that, Miles needed to feel like he was still part of the normal world. "I have a double shift today," he said, pulling his green apron out of his backpack. "I might stay late to study in the break room if they let me." My chest tightened. He had his college entrance exams in 2 weeks. He should have been at a desk. He should have been in a warm room with a reading lamp and a highlighter, not hunching over a textbook under the fluorescent buzz of a break room while smelling like roasted beans and sanitizer. "You need a real place to sleep, Miles," I said quietly. He paused, one hand on the door handle. "We are fine, Mom. I am fine." He was lying. He slipped out into the dark, the cold air rushing in before the door clicked shut. I watched him walk toward the coffee shop, his shoulders hunched against the wind. He looked so much like his father in that moment, but with none of the cruelty. I waited until he was inside, safe under the artificial lights. Before I reached for my phone, I stared at the contact name, Grant Calloway. I had not asked him for anything in years. I had prided myself on that. But pride does not keep the heater on, and pride does not give my son a desk. I told myself this was temporary. Just 2 weeks. Just until the exams were over. Just until I could get my first paycheck from a temp job that did not exist yet. I pressed the call button. It rang 4 times. I pictured him in his kitchen. It would be warm there, the smell of expensive coffee and toast. "Hello?" His voice was crisp, guarded. He knew my number. "Dad," I said. The word tasted like ash. "It is Natalie." "I am busy, Natalie. What is it?" "I need a favor," I said, rushing the words before I could lose my nerve. "Not money. I do not want money. It is just... Miles and I are in a transition period. The landlord sold our place, and the new lease fell through. We just need a place to stay for 2 weeks. Just until Miles takes his exams. He needs a quiet place to study." Silence stretched on the line. I could hear the faint clink of silverware in the background. "We have plenty of space," I added, my voice cracking. "I will sleep on the floor. Miles just needs a desk." "No," Grant said. It was not a hesitant no. It was a flat, solid wall. "Dad, please, It is freezing out here. We are sleeping in the car. That sounds like a result of your choices, Natalie, he said. And to correct you, we do not have space. I closed my eyes, visualizing the house I grew up in, the colonial on the hill. You have 5 bedrooms, I whispered. 5. It is just you, Marlene, and Tessa. Those rooms are occupied, he said. Occupied by what? I asked, my voice rising. Ghosts? Tessa needs her space, he said, and the protectiveness in his tone cut me deeper than the rejection. She is in a very creative phase right now. She is using the guest room as a painting studio, and the other room is for her video equipment. She is building a portfolio. I laughed, a dry, jagged sound. Tessa is 18. She has a bedroom. She has a studio. She has a content room, and my son is sleeping in a passenger seat with the gear shift in his ribs. Tessa has a future, Grant said. The cruelty of it took my breath away. Then I heard her voice. Marlene, my stepmother. She must have been listening on the extension or standing right next to him. Is she asking for money again? Marlene's voice was high and sharp, like breaking glass. Tell her we are not a charity, Grant. She always brings her drama to other people's doorsteps. I told you this would happen. I am not asking for money, Marlene, I said into the phone, knowing she could hear me. I am asking for a roof, for your grandson. He is not my grandson, Marlene snapped. He is your blood. Dad, I said to Grant. He is smart. He is working so hard. He wakes up at 4:30 every morning to open that coffee shop. He's trying to get into university. Grant let out a sigh, the sound of a man bored by a tedious commercial. Look, Natalie, maybe Miles is better off focusing on what he is good at. He makes coffee, right? That is a steady trade. Not everyone is cut out for higher education. Maybe his future just stops there. There is no shame in being service staff. The heat flushed up my neck, hot and stinging. He was not just rejecting us. He was erasing Miles's potential. He was looking at my brilliant, kind, hard-working boy and seeing a servant. He is 17, I said, my hand gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. He has a 4.0 GPA. He is not just a barista. You are not family, Grant said. The words dropped like stones. Not in the way that matters. You make your own messes. Do not drag this house down with you. We are not family? I repeated. The air in the car felt suddenly very thin. Is that what you think? It is what I know, he said. Now, stop calling. We have a birthday party to plan for Tessa. I looked out the window at the gray morning light filtering over the dumpster. I thought of Miles washing his face with bottled water. I thought of Tessa's 3 rooms. I thought of the warmth of that house, a warmth I was legally entitled to but morally barred from. And then, a memory surfaced. A sharp, clear image of a woman with steel in her spine and a leather briefcase in her hand. Does Grandma Eleanor know you are using her spare rooms for Tessa's hobbies? I asked softly. The silence on the other end was instant. It was not the silence of indifference this time. It was the silence of a stopped heart. What did you say? Grant asked. His voice had dropped an octave. It was tighter. Grandma Eleanor, I said, leaning back against the uncomfortable seat. Does she know you turned her house into a fortress against her own great-grandson? Leave my mother out of this, he hissed. She is old. She is confused. Is she? I asked. Because the last time I checked, she was the only one in this family who knew the difference between right and wrong. I wonder what she would say if she knew I was sleeping in a parking lot while you renovated her guest rooms for TikTok videos. You will not call her, Grant said. It was a command. But underneath it, I heard the tremor. He was terrified. Why, Dad? I asked. Are you afraid she might remind you whose name is actually on the deed? I did not wait for his answer. I did not wait for Marlene to scream again. I ended the call. I sat there in the silence, my breath clouding in the freezing air. My hands were shaking, Not from the cold, but from the adrenaline. He had given me nothing, no shelter, no money, no love, but he had given me something else. He had given me a reaction. He was afraid of Eleanor. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I did not feel helpless. I felt dangerous. 2 years ago, I was not a woman sleeping in a car. I was Natalie Kelly, a senior graphic designer at Hawthorne and Wren's studio. I had a corner desk with a view of the city skyline, a benefits package that included dental, and a savings account that held exactly $52,000. I remember that number with a painful clarity. $52,000 was my safety net. It was the fund for Miles's college tuition. It was the down payment for a future house. It was the proof that I was a responsible adult who had built a life far away from the judgment of my father. Then, the floor vanished. It did not happen with a bang. It happened with the quiet click of a front door closing. Cole, my husband of 15 years, did not just leave. Leaving would have been manageable. Heartbreak is a thing you can grieve and eventually fold away like an old sweater. What Cole did was an act of tactical destruction. I remember standing in the kitchen of our rented townhouse, holding my phone. I had opened our banking app to pay the electric bill. The screen refreshed, and the numbers that usually comforted me were gone. The balance was not $52,000. It was zero. Actually, it was worse than zero. There was a pending overdraft fee of $35 because he had timed the withdrawal perfectly to hit before the automatic rent payment processed. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. I thought it was a glitch. I thought the bank's server was down. But then the notifications started coming in. Emails from credit card companies. Alerts about transaction limits. Cole had not just taken the cash. He had maxed out every joint credit card we owned. He had bought jewelry, hotel stays, and flights, racking up nearly $20,000 of debt in a single weekend before disappearing. The only thing he left behind was a text message. It popped up while I was hyperventilating against the kitchen counter. It read, "You are strong. Nat, you will be okay." It was written like a benediction, as if his abandonment was a favor he was doing me. The weeks that followed were a blur of panic and survival. I learned very quickly that the American financial system does not care about your heartbreak. I sat in a lawyer's office, a woman who charged me $300 an hour just to tell me I was trapped. She explained that because the cards were in both our names. The banks did not care who swiped them. If I did not pay, they would come for me. If I did not pay, my credit score would plummet. That was the terrifying part. In this country, your credit score is your passport to existence. I knew that our lease was ending in 6 months. I knew that no landlord would rent a decent apartment to a single mother with a tanked credit score and a history of default. I had to make a choice. I could fight Cole in a court battle I could not afford, or I could bleed myself dry to keep a roof over my son's head. So, I paid. I took every paycheck from Hawthorne and Wren and poured it into the black hole Cole had left behind. I decimated my retirement fund to cover the minimum payments. I sold my jewelry. I sold the second car. I stopped buying meat at the grocery store. I started rationing the heat, keeping the thermostat at 62 degrees, even when the winter wind rattled the window frames. Miles watched it all. He was 15 then. A boy who should have been worrying about varsity soccer tryouts and history paper deadlines. Instead, he watched his mother age 5 years in 5 months. One Tuesday evening, I came home late from the studio to find him sitting at the kitchen table. He was not doing homework. He was counting crumpled $5 bills and loose change. "I got a job," he said without looking up. My stomach dropped. I told him no. I told him his job was school. I told him that I had everything under control. He looked at me then, and I saw that the childhood had vanished from his eyes. He knew. He knew about the empty bank account. He knew about the notices I hid in the bottom drawer. "It is just bussing tables on weekends." "Mom," he said, his voice steady, "it is cash tips. It helps." I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower so he would not hear me, and cried until I threw up. That was the first crack in my pride. My son was scrubbing tables to pay for his father's sins. The humiliation became my new normal. I remember sitting in the living room, the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the hold music of a credit card collection agency. Miles was sitting 6 feet away on the sofa, a textbook open on his lap. I tried to keep my voice low, tried to make the conversation sound like a business call. "Yes, I understand the terms," I whispered, turning my back to him. "I am just asking for a hardship extension. Just 1 month, please." The woman on the other line was robotic. She read from a script. She did not care that my husband was a thief. She only cared that the algorithm had flagged my account. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Miles staring at his book, his pen hovering over the paper. He was not writing. He was listening. He was listening to his mother beg a stranger for mercy. That shame burned hotter than anger. It felt like I was failing him in real time, dissolving the foundation of safety a parent is supposed to provide. Then the ground fell out from under me again. The freelance market crashed. I had been taking side gigs, logos, brochures, anything to bring in an extra $500 here or there, but the economy tightened. Clients stopped replying to emails. Retainers were canceled. The steady stream of extra income that was keeping the lights on dried up into a trickle. Then dust. Hawthorne and Wren started missing payroll. First it was a day late, then 3 days, then a memo about restructuring. I knew what was coming, but I was in denial. I kept showing up, kept working, kept pretending that if I just worked hard enough, the universe would stop punishing me. I could have called my father then. 2 years ago. I still had an apartment. I still had a job. Even if it was shaky, I could have called Grant and said, "Dad, Cole cleaned us out. I need help." But I did not. I pictured the dinner table at his house. I pictured Marlene's thin, satisfied smile. I pictured Grant shaking his head, swirling his wine, and saying, "I always knew that man was no good. You have such poor judgment." Natalie, I knew they would not offer help without a lecture. They would not offer a loan without collateral. They would consume my tragedy and turn it into an anecdote about why I was the disappointment of the family. They would look at Miles with pity, and I could not bear that. I wanted to protect him from their judgment as much as I wanted to protect him from the poverty. So I stayed silent. I told them everything was fine. I told them Cole was traveling for work. I told them business was booming. I built a wall of lies to keep my dignity intact, not realizing that dignity is a luxury you cannot afford when you are drowning. I thought I could outrun the disaster. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. But poverty is not a sudden event. It is a slow, suffocating slide. It is the decision to pay the car insurance instead of the credit card. It is the decision to buy generic pasta instead of fresh vegetables. It is the realization that you are one flat tire, one sick day, one missed paycheck away from ruin. And when the ruin finally came, when the eviction notice was taped to the door and the job disappeared, I realized the most painful truth of all. It was not just the money I had lost. I had $52,000, and now I had nothing. But the real loss was the realization that I had nowhere to go. I was 37 years old, and I was an orphan in every way that mattered. The house on the hill, the one with 5 bedrooms and a father inside, was not a home. It was just a building where people who shared my DNA lived strangers' lives. That night, packing our lives into cardboard boxes, looking at the empty spaces where our furniture used to be, I realized that homelessness is not just about a lack of shelter. It is the total absence of a safety net. It is the moment you reach out your hand in the dark and realize, with terrifying absolute certainty, that no one is there to catch you. Before the eviction notices and the cold nights in the parking lot, there was the year my mother died. That was the year the foundation of my life actually cracked. The money Cole stole later was just the final gust of wind that knocked the house down. But the termites had been eating away at the beams long before that. My mother, Janet, was the kind of woman who apologized to the table when she bumped into it. She was soft in a way the world likes to punish. When the sickness came, it moved with a terrifying, predatory speed. 1 month it was a persistent cough, and 2 months later, we were talking about hospice care and pain management. The medical bills did not just arrive, they flooded us, even with insurance. The copays, the out-of-network specialists, and the medication costs were eroding my bank account by thousands of dollars a month. I was working full-time at the studio, then driving straight to her small apartment to bathe her, feed her, and manage her morphine drip. I was drowning in exhaustion. I broke my own rule and called Grant. I remember standing on my mother's balcony, the phone pressed to my ear, watching the sun set over a neighborhood that looked too peaceful for what was happening inside. "Dad," I said, "I need help. Mom is dying. The insurance is capping out. I just need $5,000 to cover the home care nurse so I can sleep for 4 hours a night." Grant did not even pause to feign sympathy. "That is the past." "Natalie," he said. His voice was not angry. It was indifferent, which was worse. "Janet and I have been divorced for nearly 20 years. That chapter is closed. She is the mother of your child," I said, my voice trembling. "She is the woman who typed your law school papers. She is the woman who ironed your shirts for a decade. Marlene does not think it is appropriate for me to get financially involved with an ex-spouse," he said. "It creates boundary issues. We have our own family to think about. Tessa needs braces. We are redoing the patio." I hung up the phone and screamed into his voicemail, but I doubt he ever listened to it, to understand why his refusal was not just cold but cruel. You have to understand the history he was trying to erase. You have to go back to the afternoon I turned 18. I had come home early from school to surprise them. I walked into our living room, the one with the blue carpet my mother loved, and I saw them. Grant and Marlene. She was a paralegal at his firm back then, 10 years younger than my mother, with sharper edges and louder perfume. They were not just talking, they were erasing my mother's marriage on her own sofa. When they saw me, Grant did not apologize. He did not scramble. He looked at me with a terrifying annoyance, as if I were the one intruding on his life. My mother never screamed. She never threw his clothes on the lawn. She just shrank. She let him take the car. She let him take the savings. She let him rewrite the narrative so that he was the victim of a boring marriage and she was the anchor dragging him down. For the next 19 years, she lived in a quiet, dignified silence, letting the pain eat her from the inside out until it finally manifested as the sickness that killed her. When she died on a rainy Tuesday in November, I called Grant one last time. "She is gone." I said, "The funeral is Saturday." He sighed. "Saturday? Saturday is bad for us. Tessa has her regional dance showcase. We have bought tickets for the whole group." I held the phone away from my ear, staring at it in disbelief. "You are not coming?" "We will send flowers," he said. He did not come. Marlene did not come. Tessa, who was 16 then and old enough to know better, did not come. I sat in the front pew of the church, holding Miles's hand. He was 15, wearing a suit that was slightly too small for his growing shoulders. The church was half empty. My mother had made herself so small to accommodate Grant's ego that by the time she died, there was hardly anyone left who remembered how big her spirit used to be. I paid for everything: the casket, the plot, the service. I wrote checks with a shaking hand, watching my savings dip lower and lower, feeling a panic that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with abandonment. I was not just burying a mother. I was burying the only witness to my life who actually cared if I survived, that night, after the wake. Miles and I sat in my living room. The silence was heavy. He was looking at his shoes, his face pale and drawn. "Mom?" he asked softly. "Yeah, baby? What did I do wrong?" I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" "Grandpa," he said, "why does he hate us? Did I do something when I was little? Is it because I'm not good at sports? Is it because I'm quiet? He never calls. He didn't come today. It feels like he's punishing us." My heart broke. I realized then that I had made a mistake. I had tried to shield Miles from the truth of his grandfather's character. I had let him believe that Grant was just busy, just important, just distant. I had let my son internalize the rejection because I wanted him to have a grandfather, even a fake one. I pulled Miles onto the sofa beside me. I took his hands in mine. "You listen to me," I said, and my voice was harder than it had ever been. "You did nothing wrong. You are perfect. Your grandfather does not stay away because of you. He stays away because of me. And he stays away because looking at us reminds him of what he did." I told him everything. I told him about the affair. I told him about the money Grant took from my mother. I told him about how Marlene had banned my name from being spoken at their dinner table because she could not handle the reminder that she was the second wife. Not the only wife. I watched Miles's face change. The confusion melted away, replaced by a cold, adult understanding. He stopped crying. He sat up straighter. "He is a bad person," Miles said. It was not a question. It was a verdict. "Yes," I said. "He is." That was the moment the bridge finally burned. Miles stopped asking about Grandpa Grant. He stopped waiting for birthday cards that never came. He stopped wondering why we were never invited to the summer barbecues or the Christmas parties. He understood that we were the ghosts haunting Grant's perfect new life, and ghosts are not welcome at the dinner table. That night, I remembered something my mother had told me near the end. When the morphine made her lucid and dreamy at the same time, she had grabbed my wrist with her thin, paper-dry hand. "Natalie," she had whispered, "do not confuse a big house with a happy one. Home is not a beautiful place. Home is the place where people do not leave you behind." I looked around my apartment. It was modest. The furniture was mismatched. The bank account was draining fast. But as I looked at Miles, sleeping on the couch because he did not want to leave me alone, I knew we had something Grant did not. We had loyalty, but loyalty does not pay the rent. And as I grieved my mother, I did not know that the man I married was about to finish what my father started, stripping away the last layer of protection I had left. I thought I had hit bottom at the funeral. I was wrong. The fall had only just begun. 3 months ago, the sky did not fall. It just quietly lowered itself until it was crushing us against the pavement. It started on a Tuesday morning. I walked into the lobby of Hawthorne and Wren, holding a travel mug of tea, ready to finalize the layout for the mid-year catalog. The security guard, a man named Earl who usually asked me about the weather, would not look me in the eye. The glass doors were locked. There was a piece of paper taped to the inside of the glass. It was not a memo. It was a legal notice. Bankruptcy. Chapter 7. Liquidation. There was no meeting. There was no severance package. There was just an email that hit my phone 2 minutes later, explaining that payroll had been suspended indefinitely and that creditors would be in touch regarding any outstanding invoices for freelance work. I stood on the sidewalk, watching my coworkers pound on the glass, and I felt a cold, heavy stone settle in my stomach. They owed me 3 weeks of back pay. They owed me $4,000 in project fees for the freelance work I had done on weekends. I applied for unemployment that afternoon. I sat at my kitchen table, uploading tax documents and pay stubs, watching the little spinning wheel on the government website. I thought it would be a safety net. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I got a letter, because the bankruptcy filing was complex and contested. My claim was flagged for manual review. Manual review is a bureaucratic way of saying starvation. I had a little money left, just enough to keep the landlord off my back for 2 months if we barely ate. I paid the rent. I paid the electricity. I bought rice and beans. I applied for every design job within 50 miles. I applied for administrative assistant jobs. I applied for data entry. But the market had frozen. Every rejection email was the same. "We are not hiring at this time. The position has been put on hold." When the eviction notice finally came, it was not a surprise. It was a confirmation. I tried to talk to the landlord, a man who had once complimented my holiday wreath. I stood in his office and asked for 30 more days. I told him about the unemployment claim. I told him about Miles's exams. He did not look up from his computer. "I am running a business, Ms. Kelly," he said. "Not a shelter. You have to be out by Friday." We packed what we could into the sedan. We sold the rest for cash. Pennies on the dollar, the couch, the TV, the bookshelves. It felt like I was selling pieces of our humanity. The first night in the car was the hardest. We parked in a quiet spot near a public park. I tried to make it feel like an adventure, like a camping trip. Miles did not say anything. He just reclined the seat, pulled his hoodie over his eyes, and tried to sleep. We developed a routine born of necessity. We showered at the public pool facilities or, on bad days, we used the single-occupancy bathroom at the gas station. We brushed our teeth with bottled water in the parking lot of the library. Miles became a ghost. He went to school, then straight to Beancraft. He would stay there until closing, picking up extra shifts, cleaning the floors, anything to stay out of the car. When he came back to the vehicle at night, he smelled like stale espresso and sanitizer. One night, under the yellow buzz of a street lamp in the Riverview Plaza lot, I saw him wince as he opened his textbook. "Let me see your hands," I said. He tried to pull away, but I grabbed his wrist. His knuckles were red and raw. There was a blister forming on the side of his thumb. "It is nothing," he said, pulling his hand back. "Just the steam wand. The gasket is leaky. It sprays sometimes." "Miles," I whispered. "It is fine." "Mom," he said, his voice hard. "I picked up the closing shift tomorrow. That is another $60. He was studying for his SATs on his phone, squinting at the tiny screen because we could not afford a new laptop battery. He was 17 years old, burning his hands to buy us gas money. While his peers were worrying about prom dates, I tried to find us a place. I called the shelters. The women's shelter was full. The family shelter had a 6-month wait list. I called the few friends I had left from my old life. The conversations were excruciating. They were sympathetic until I mentioned the word stay. Then, the walls came up. "Oh, Natalie, we would love to. But we have guests coming. We are renovating right now. Cole really did a number on you, huh? That is so terrible." They were afraid. They were afraid that if they let us in, we would never leave. They were afraid that poverty was contagious. That was when I broke. I looked at Miles, asleep in the passenger seat with his chemistry notes open on his lap, his burned hand resting on the dashboard. I could not do this to him anymore. I swallowed my pride. I swallowed the bile in my throat. I dialed Grant's number. It was the call I had dreaded for years, the call that confirmed everything he had ever said about me. He answered on the third ring. "Grant Calloway." "Dad," I said. "It is Natalie." I told him everything. I did not sugarcoat it this time. I told him about the bankruptcy, the car, the cold. I told him I just needed 2 weeks. 2 weeks to get Miles through his exams. 2 weeks to find a new deposit. I waited for the father in him to wake up. I waited for him to say, "Oh my God, come home immediately." Instead, he sighed. It was a heavy, irritated sound. "You really have a talent for failure. Natalie," he said, "I am not asking for a handout. Dad, I am asking for a room. You have 5 of them." "We have discussed this," he said. "Marlene is not comfortable with it, and frankly, neither am I. You are not family. Natalie, you are a reminder of a mistake." "A mistake?" I choked out. "I am your daughter." "And Miles?" Grant asked. "How is the coffee boy? Still pouring lattes? That is about his speed, isn't it? He was never going to be academic. Maybe it is better he gets used to the service industry now. Some people are born to serve. Natalie, he is just finding his level." The rage that hit me was white hot. It was not the heat of embarrassment. It was the heat of a mother tiger watching a predator circle her cub. He was not just saying no. He was enjoying it. He was looking down from his hill and laughing at my son's burnt hands. "He is going to be an engineer," I said, my voice shaking. "He is brilliant. He is homeless," Grant corrected. "And that is on you." I looked at the phone. I looked at the dark parking lot. And then I remembered the leather briefcase. I remembered the deed. I remembered the old woman who sat in a nursing home, forgotten by the son who was living in her house. You know, I said, my voice suddenly very quiet, very steady. I remember Grandma Eleanor telling me something about that house. There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. She told me she never signed it over to you, I said. She told me you are just a guest. Grant did not speak. The silence was heavy, thick with sudden, paralyzing fear. I wonder if she knows you are letting her great-grandson sleep in a Toyota while you mock him, I added. Grant did not say another word. The line went dead. He had hung up, but I knew I had drawn blood. That night, I did something masochistic. Instead of driving straight back to the hidden corner of the Riverview Plaza parking lot where Miles was waiting, I drove past the house. It sat on the top of the hill, glowing like a lantern in the darkness. The Calloway residence. It was a sprawling colonial with white pillars and black shutters. The kind of house that appears on holiday cards with golden retriever puppies on the lawn. The grass was manicured to a military precision, green and lush even under the streetlights. The driveway was paved with fresh asphalt, and there were 3 cars parked there: Grant's silver sedan, Marlene's oversized luxury SUV, and a bright red convertible that I assumed was Tessa's early birthday present. It looked like a fortress of American success. It looked impenetrable, but as I idled my car at the stop sign, watching the warm yellow light spill from the living room window, the same window where I had once caught my father cheating on my mother, a memory dislodged itself from the back of my mind. I was 10 years old. I was standing in that front yard, but it looked different then. The rose bushes were wilder. My grandmother, Eleanor, was standing next to me. She was holding a pair of gardening shears, and she had dirt under her fingernails. Grant had been inside, arguing about the cost of repainting the siding. He had been shouting that it was his house, and he would paint it whatever color he wanted. Eleanor had squeezed my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. She had looked down at me, her blue eyes sharp as cut glass. "Let him shout. Natalie," she had said. "Men like to shout about things they do not own. It makes them feel tall." "But it is Daddy's house," I had said. "No," Eleanor had corrected me, her voice low and conspiratorial. "This house belongs to me, and don't you ever forget that." I stared at the house now. 27 years later, was it just a metaphor? Or was it a legal reality? I pulled away from the curb, my heart hammering a new rhythm. I needed to know. I could not call Grant again. He had made his position clear. But there was another Calloway. I drove to a gas station, parked under the awning, and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name. Uncle Ray. Ray Calloway was Grant's younger brother. He was a real estate attorney in the city, the black sheep of the family, only because he refused to play Marlene's social climbing games. He had sent a wreath to my mother's funeral. He was the only one who had sent a card when Miles was born. I dialed. It was nearly 9 o'clock at night. "Natalie?" His voice was warm, surprised. "Is everything okay? I haven't heard from you since... Well, it has been a while." "I am okay. Uncle Ray," I lied. "Well, actually, I am not. I need to ask you a legal question about the house on Chestnut Hill." "Dad's house?" Ray asked. "Is it?" I asked. "Is it Dad's house?" There was a pause on the line. I could hear the rustle of papers, the sound of a television in the background being muted. "Why are you asking, Nat?" "Because Miles and I are on the street." "Ray," I said. I did not have the energy to soften the blow. "We are sleeping in my car. I asked Grant for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks so Miles could study for his entrance exams. Grant told me we were not family. He told me the house was full. He told me Miles should get used to being a barista because that is all he is good for." "He said what?" Ray's voice dropped. It was not the voice of a lawyer anymore. It was the voice of a man who had just heard something unforgivable. "He said that about Miles? About a kid who works harder than anyone I know?" "He said, we are not family," I repeated. "He said, I am a mistake. That son of a bitch, Ray breathed. Ray, I said, pressing the phone harder against my ear. Who owns the house? Eleanor, Ray said instantly. It is in a trust, the Eleanor Calloway Revocable Trust. I drafted the paperwork myself 15 years ago when Dad died. Grant has a life estate interest, which basically means he is allowed to live there. But he does not own the bricks, the land, or the roof. He is a tenant, Natalie, a tenant who lives there by his mother's permission. My breath hitched. Does he know that? He knows he does not have the deed, Ray said. But he thinks Eleanor is too old to do anything about it. He thinks because she is in the assisted living facility, she is out of the game. He thinks he is the king of the castle because the queen is in exile. He told me she was confused, I said. He told me she would not understand, Ray laughed. A dark, dry sound. Confused? Eleanor plays bridge 3 times a week and wins. She manages her own stock portfolio. The only thing she is confused about is why Grant stopped visiting her. She is furious. Natalie, she knows he didn't go to Janet's funeral. She has a photo of your mother on her nightstand. She asks me about you and Miles every time I visit. She asks about us? Every time. She thinks you are staying away because you are busy. I didn't have the heart to tell her you were struggling. I didn't know it was this bad. It is this bad, I said. But maybe it is about to get better. Do you have her number? Her direct line? I do, Ray said. But Natalie, if you call her, you are going to start a war. Grant is terrified of her. If she finds out he turned you away, she will scorch the earth. Good, I said. I think the earth needs a little scorching. Ray gave me the number. I thanked him and hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at the keypad. If I made this call, there was no going back. I was not just asking for help. I was pulling the pin on a grenade and rolling it into my father's living room. I thought of Miles's burned hands. I dialed. The phone rang once, twice. Hello? The voice was not frail. It was not trembling. It was crisp, authoritative, and unmistakably Eleanor Calloway. Grandma? I said. It is Natalie. Natalie? The tone shifted instantly from suspicion to warmth. My goodness, I was just looking at that photo of you and Miles, the one from the park. Why haven't you called? Is everything all right? No, Grandma, I said. I have to tell you something, and I need you to promise you won't hang up. I am 92 years old, she said. I do not have time to hang up on people I love. Speak. I told her. I told her about the eviction. I told her about the car. But mostly, I told her about the call with Grant. I told her exactly what he had said about Miles. I repeated the words. Service staff, not family. Mistake. I heard her breathing on the other end. It was steady, controlled. She did not gasp. She did not cry. She listened with the terrifying focus of a judge hearing a confession. He said Miles does not belong in my house? She asked finally. Her voice was quiet, but it vibrated with a tension that made the hair on my arms stand up. He said there was no room, I said. He said Tessa needed a studio. A studio? Eleanor repeated. The word dripped with disdain. For those little videos she makes where she dances in front of a mirror? Yes. And you are in a car? Yes. There was a silence. Then, I heard the sound of a zipper. Grandma? I am getting my calendar, she said. When is this birthday party for Tessa? The one Marlene has been bragging about on Facebook? It is this Saturday, I said. At the house. Good, Eleanor said. I will be there. Grandma, you don't have to. I will be there, she cut me off. And you will be there, you and Miles. Uncle Ray will pick me up, and he will pick you up. I want you to wear something nice. Do not look like a victim. Natalie, look like a Calloway. They won't let us in, I said. Grant made it very clear. It is not his door to close, Eleanor said. I am coming home, Natalie, and I am bringing my briefcase. Your briefcase? The one with the paperwork, she said. The one that reminds my son that he is a guest in my world. She paused, and for a second, her voice softened, but the steel was still there, polished and sharp. Listen to me, Natalie. If anyone humiliates my family in my house, I will teach them what the truth looks like, and the truth is going to hurt them a great deal more than it hurts you. Be ready. The line clicked dead. I sat back in the seat, letting out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 2 years. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was late. I had to get back to Miles. I started the engine, and for the first time in weeks, the rumble of the old motor didn't sound like a failure. It sounded like a tank rolling into position. We were not just surviving anymore. We were mobilizing. Uncle Ray met us in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner on Friday afternoon. He did not drive his usual luxury sedan. Instead, he arrived in a nondescript rental car, looking over his shoulder as he popped the trunk. He was treating this like a hostage exchange, not a family reunion. He handed me 2 garment bags. They were heavy, plastic-wrapped, and smelled of dry cleaning chemicals and lavender. I called in a favor with a friend who runs a consignment boutique in the city, Ray said, his voice low. She pulled these for me. They are not new, but they look expensive, and that is what matters. I unzipped the first bag. Inside was a navy blue dress, structured and modest, with a cut that suggested money without screaming about it. In the other bag was a charcoal gray suit, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie. For Miles, Ray said. Ray, we cannot accept this, I started. But he cut me off with a sharp wave of his hand. Listen to me, Natalie. Tomorrow is not a party. It is a courtroom. The judge and jury just happen to be holding cocktail glasses. Marlene and Grant will look for any reason to dismiss you. If you walk in there looking like you have been sleeping in a car, they win before you even open your mouth. They will use your poverty as proof of your character. Do not let them use your appearance as a weapon. I looked at the suit. It was nicer than anything Miles had ever owned, even before we lost everything. Thank you, I whispered. I picked up Eleanor's dry cleaning too, Ray added with a grim smile. She gave me very specific instructions. Apparently, she plans to wear her fighting red. I have not seen her this energized in a decade. When I got back to the car, Miles was sitting in the passenger seat, holding a piece of paper. He had smoothed it out on his chemistry textbook, treating it with the reverence of a religious artifact. My manager wrote it for me, he said, handing it to me. It was a letter of recommendation on the coffee shop's letterhead. I read the opening lines, to the admissions committee. Miles Kelly is the most dedicated employee I have had in 15 years of management. His work ethic is matched only by his integrity. Do you think Grandma Eleanor will read it? Miles asked. He was staring at the dashboard, his fingers picking at a loose thread on his jeans. I mean, I know it is just a coffee shop. It is not an internship at a law firm or an art gallery like Tessa has. But I want her to know I am not useless. I want her to know I am not just what Grant said I was. My chest ached. He was 17, and he was already trying to prove his worth to a woman he barely remembered. She will read it, Miles, I said, and she will love it. I turned in the seat to face him fully. But we need ground rules for tomorrow. Number 1, we do not raise our voices, no matter what they say, no matter what Marlene sneers or Grant implies. If we scream, we look unstable. If we stay calm, we look powerful. Number 2, we stick to the facts. We are not there to beg. We are there to support your grandmother. And if they kick us out? Miles asked. They won't, I said, though I was not entirely sure. Because Eleanor Calloway does not let people kick her out of her own house. Later that evening, my phone rang. It was Eleanor. Natalie, she said, skipping the pleasantries, I need you to think back, over the last 5 years. Whenever Grant referred to the house, what exact words did he use? What do you mean? I asked, putting the phone on speaker so I could continue sorting through our small box of documents. Did he say, my house? Eleanor asked. Or did he say the estate? Did he ever mention a lease agreement? Did he ever mention paying rent? He always said, "my house," I said. He always acted like he owned it outright. He told me once that he was thinking of refinancing the mortgage to build a pool. Refinance the mortgage, Eleanor repeated, her voice turning icy. That is interesting, considering there is no mortgage. I paid that house off in 1982. I could hear the scratching of a pen on paper. She was taking notes. She was building a timeline. Why, Grandma? Because Marlene has been making calls to my estate planner, Eleanor said. She thinks I am senile. She thinks I do not check my messages. She is trying to expedite a transfer of deed based on diminished capacity. She wants to secure the asset before I die. She does not just want to live there, Natalie. She wants to own it so she can sell it. She knows the market value is high right now. Can she do that? Not while I can still hold a pen, Eleanor said. But we need to be careful. Tomorrow is going to be dangerous. They are desperate. People do stupid things when they are desperate to keep money they did not earn. After we hung up, I felt a sudden urge to dig through the box of papers I had managed to save from the apartment. It was a plastic bin filled with birth certificates, Miles's immunization records, and old tax returns, but at the very bottom, tucked under a stack of old photos, was a yellowing envelope. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was my mother's. On the front, in her looping, careful script, she had written, "For Natalie, if you ever need shelter." I had not opened it in years. I had forgotten it existed. My hands trembled as I tore the seal. Inside, there was no money. There was just a single, tarnished brass key and a small note on personalized stationery. Grant thinks he changed all the locks. The note read, but he forgot the side door to the sunroom, the one behind the trellis. He never uses it. Eleanor gave me this key the day I left. She told me that as long as she was alive, I was never truly locked out. I never used it. I was too proud. But maybe you will need it one day. I held the key in my palm. It was heavy, cold, and real. It was a physical link between my mother's silence and Eleanor's rage. Grant had spent 20 years trying to keep us out. But the women in his life had been passing keys to each other in the dark. I showed it to Miles. What is that? It is an insurance policy, I said. The night air in the parking lot was getting colder. I draped a blanket over Miles's legs. He was trying to sleep, but I could tell his mind was racing. Mom, he whispered, what if they laugh at us? What if Grant tells everyone I am just a coffee boy in front of the whole party? Then let him, I said. Because while he is laughing, Grandma is going to be reading the eviction notice on his tenure. My phone buzzed again. It was a text message. I looked at the screen. The name Dad flashed in bright white letters against the dark background. I do not know what you said to Ray or my mother, but do not think for a second you are welcome tomorrow. If you show up and cause a scene, I will call the police. Stay away. This is my family, not yours. I read the text twice, a month ago. This message would have crushed me. It would have sent me spiraling into shame. But tonight, I read it differently. I did not see anger. I saw panic. He was threatening me with the police because he had no other cards to play. He was trying to keep me away not because he hated me, but because he was terrified of what would happen if I walked through that door with his mother. What is it? Miles asked, sitting up. Just a reminder, I said, turning off the screen. From who? From Grant, I said. He told us not to come. Are we going to listen? No, I said. Eleanor told me something important. She said they will try to make us feel small. She said, do not help them. I looked at the garment bags hanging from the grab handle in the back seat. I looked at the old brass key in my lap. Get some sleep, Miles, I said. We have a big day tomorrow. We are going home. The driveway of the house on Chestnut Hill was lined with cars that cost more than I had earned in the last decade. There were sleek German sedans, oversized luxury SUVs with pristine wax jobs, and vintage convertibles that were only driven on sunny Saturdays. When I pulled my 10-year-old Toyota Camry into the last available spot near the hedge, the engine sputtered and died with a wheeze that sounded violently out of place. It was like coughing during a church sermon. I looked at Miles in the passenger seat. He was wearing the charcoal suit Uncle Ray had found. It fit him surprisingly well, though the cuffs were a fraction of an inch too short for his long arms. He was gripping the door handle so hard his knuckles were white. "Ready?" I asked, though I felt like I was about to throw up. "Do I look okay?" he asked. He wasn't asking about his hair. He was asking if he looked poor. "You look like a Callaway," I said, repeating Eleanor's words. "Better. Actually, you look like a man who bought his own integrity." We stepped out of the car. The air smelled of expensive perfume, wood smoke from the fire pit, and roasted rosemary. The backyard had been transformed. It was not just a birthday party. It was a production. Strings of Edison bulbs crisscrossed the lawn, casting a warm golden glow over the crowd. There were white linen tablecloths, crystal glassware catching the light, and a jazz trio playing softly in the corner. It was beautiful. It was breathtaking, and it felt completely, utterly fake. As we walked up the long driveway toward the garden gate, the heads started to turn. It began with the valet who looked confused that we had parked our own car. Then, the guests near the entrance stopped talking. I saw a woman in a silver dress lean over to her husband and whisper behind her hand. Her eyes darted from my scuffed heels to Miles's suit. They were analyzing us, scanning for the cracks in our presentation. They knew we didn't belong to this tribe of easy wealth. We walked with the stiffness of people who are used to being told no. We reached the edge of the patio. Grant was standing near the bar, holding a tumbler of scotch. He looked the part of the benevolent patriarch perfectly. He was laughing at someone's joke, his head thrown back, his posture relaxed and expansive. He looked like a man who owned the world. Then, his eyes swept over the crowd and landed on me. The laughter died in his throat. It was instantaneous. His face went from warm and inviting to a mask of cold, sharp fury. He set his glass down on the high-top table with a clatter that was just loud enough to make the people nearby stop talking. Before he could move, Marlene intercepted us. She appeared out of nowhere, wearing a dress that probably cost $3,000. Her face pulled tight in a grimace that she was trying to pass off as a smile. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. She didn't shout, but her voice was vibrating with venom. She stepped in front of us, blocking our path to the main party, acting as a human shield for her perfect evening. "We are here for Tessa's birthday," I said, keeping my voice level. "She is my sister." "She barely knows you exist," Marlene spat. She looked at Miles, her eyes raking over his suit with disdain. "And you brought him? Look at you. You look like you are here to ask for a donation. Did you come to embarrass us? Is that it? Did you come to beg in front of our friends?" "We are not here to beg. Marlene," I said. "We are family. You are a liability," she said. Grant was beside her now. He didn't look at me. He looked at the guests who were watching us with unabashed curiosity. He put a hand on Marlene's shoulder, a gesture that looked comforting but was actually a restraint. He forced a tight, pained smile onto his face, playing the role of the long-suffering father dealing with a problem child. "Natalie," he said, his voice loud enough to carry to the nearest group of people. "I thought we discussed this on the phone. I told you that tonight was a private family gathering. I did not realize you were having trouble understanding simple instructions." "I understood you fine, Dad," I said. "I just disagreed." He laughed. A short, dismissive bark. He stepped closer, invading my personal space, trying to intimidate me into retreating, but he didn't whisper. He wanted an audience. He wanted to control the narrative before I could open my mouth. "Well, since you are here," Grant said, turning his gaze to Miles. "I hope you didn't take time off from work. Miles, what is it you do again? Pouring coffee? Scrubbing milk steamers?" He looked around at his friends, inviting them in on the joke. "My grandson here is a barista," Grant announced, his tone dripping with mock pride that was actually pure condescension. "He is very service-oriented. We tried to push him toward academics, but you know how it is. Some people just aren't built for the heavy lifting of a real career." The guests chuckled nervously. It was a cruel, awkward sound. Miles stiffened beside me. I felt his arm tense. I saw the flush of shame creep up his neck. This was exactly what he had feared. He was being reduced to his lowest point in front of people who had never worked a minimum wage shift in their lives. "Actually," Grant continued, twisting the knife, "maybe we can get you an apron. Miles, the catering staff looks a little overwhelmed. If you want to make yourself useful, I am sure they could use someone to bus the tables. It would be just like being at work, right?" "Stop it," I said. My voice was low, but it was dangerous. "Do not speak to him like that." "I am just being practical. Natalie," Grant said, his eyes cold and dead. "You are the one who dragged him here. You are the one who raised him to aim for the bottom. If you are going to crash my party, the least you can do is have the decency to know your place. You are not guests. You are spectators." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a growl that only we could hear. "Get out, now, before I have security throw you out. You are embarrassing yourself." I opened my mouth to speak, to scream, to tell him about the eviction, about the car, about the nights we spent shivering. But then I looked at Miles. He wasn't looking at the ground. He wasn't crying. He was looking straight at Grant. "I am not ashamed of my job," Miles said. His voice was clear. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "I wake up at 4 a.m, Miles said, his hands unclenching at his sides. "I work double shifts. I pay for my own clothes. I do not take things that do not belong to me." Grant blinked. He hadn't expected the boy to speak. He hadn't expected the prey to bite back. "Is that supposed to impress me?" Grant sneered. "You are a laborer, Miles. You are a footnote." "At least I am honest," Miles said. Grant's face turned a violent shade of red. He took a step forward, his hand raising slightly as if he might grab Miles's lapel. The tension in the air snapped tight. The jazz band had stopped playing. The guests were silent, watching the train wreck unfold in the middle of the garden. "You ungrateful little—" Grant started. Thud. The sound was heavy and solid. It came from the driveway. It was the sound of a heavy car door closing with the weight of authority. Grant froze. Marlene turned her head sharply. We all turned. At the top of the driveway, standing under the halo of the security light, was my Uncle Ray. He looked grim, like a bodyguard clearing a path. He walked around to the passenger side of the rental car and opened the door. A cane emerged first, ebony wood with a silver handle. Then, a small, frail figure stepped out. She was wearing a bright, blood-red coat that looked like armor. Her white hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant knot. She stood less than 5 feet tall, but in that moment, she looked like a giant. In her left hand, gripped tight against her side, was an old, battered leather briefcase. The silence in the yard changed. It wasn't the silence of awkwardness anymore. It was the silence of fear. Eleanor Calloway had arrived, and she didn't look like a grandmother coming to a birthday party. She looked like a judge walking into an execution. The silence in the garden was absolute. The jazz trio had lowered their instruments. The waiters froze with trays of champagne halfway to their chests. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. As Eleanor Calloway walked across the flagstone patio, she moved with a slow, deliberate cadence. Tap, step, tap, step. The sound of her cane hitting the stone was the only noise in the world. She did not look at the guests. She did not look at Marlene, who was standing there with her mouth slightly open, like a fish gasping for air. She did not even look at Grant yet. She walked straight to me. "Natalie," she said. Her voice was not the crackling whisper of the elderly. It was clear, resonant, and steady. She reached out and cupped my face with a hand that felt like dry parchment paper, but held the strength of iron. "You look tired. My girl." "I am okay, Grandma," I managed to say, though my throat felt like it was closing up. "No," she corrected me gently. "You are not okay, but you are here. That is what matters." Then, she turned to Miles. He was standing at attention, terrified, his hands clasped behind his back to hide them. Eleanor didn't let him hide. She reached out and took his right hand, the one with the blister from the steam wand, and pulled it forward. She ran her thumb over the red, angry skin of his burn. "Does it hurt?" she asked. "A little," Miles whispered. "It is just a burn from work." "You go in at 4:30 in the morning," she said, stating it as a fact, not a question. "That is what your mother told me. You open the store?" "Yes, ma'am. My daughter-in-law, Janet, wrote to me before she passed," Eleanor said, raising her voice just enough so that it carried to the back of the crowd. "She told me her grandson was kind. She told me he was smart, but she was worried he would be too soft for this world." She looked Miles in the eye, and then she smiled. It was a fierce, proud smile. "She was wrong," Eleanor said. "These are working hands, Miles. These are honorable hands. Never hide them in my presence." She let go of him and turned. The warmth vanished from her face instantly. She pivoted toward Grant like a turret gun locking onto a target. "Mother," Grant said, his voice straining for a casual, jovial tone. "This is a surprise. We didn't know you were feeling up to—" "Why were you not at Janet's funeral?" Eleanor asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. Grant blinked. "What, Mother? That was years ago. This is hardly the time." "I asked you a question," Eleanor cut in. "Why was my son absent when the mother of his first child was put into the ground? Why did you tell me you were too busy when I know for a fact you were playing golf that weekend?" Grant's smile faltered. He looked at his guests, who were now watching him with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Mother, let's not do this here. Let's go inside." "We can talk in the study." "In the study?" Eleanor laughed. A dry, sharp sound. "You want privacy now? 2 minutes ago, you were shouting at this boy in front of 50 people. You were mocking his job. You were mocking his poverty. You wanted an audience. Grant, now you have one." "I was not mocking him," Grant lied, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "I was giving him career advice. I was trying to help." "You left them to sleep in a car," Eleanor said. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone near the buffet table dropped a fork. "You have 5 bedrooms," Eleanor continued, her voice rising, shaking with a controlled fury. "You have a heated garage, you have a guest house, and for 3 weeks, your own flesh and blood has been sleeping in a parking lot at Riverview Plaza, washing their faces in gas station sinks, and when they asked you for help, for 2 weeks of shelter so this boy could take his exams, you told them they were not family." "That is a lie," Marlene screeched, stepping forward. Her face was flushed red. "She is lying to you. Eleanor, she is a grifter. She just wants money." Eleanor did not even turn her head. She kept her eyes locked on Grant, but she raised one finger in Marlene's direction. "I did not ask you, Marlene," Eleanor said. "And frankly, considering you are standing on my patio, drinking wine paid for by the trust I established, I would suggest you lower your voice." Marlene froze. She looked at Grant, waiting for him to defend her, but Grant was looking at the floor. "Ray," Eleanor said. Uncle Ray stepped forward from the shadows near the driveway. He looked calm, professional, and utterly lethal. "Tell them," Eleanor said. "The property at 42 Chestnut Hill," Ray announced, his lawyer voice projecting clearly across the yard, "is the sole property of the Eleanor Calloway Revocable Trust. Grant Calloway is a licensee. He has no equity. He has no ownership. He lives here solely at the discretion of the trustee." "And I am the trustee," Eleanor said. Grant looked up then. His eyes were wide, panicked. Mother, you can't be serious. I have lived here for 15 years. I have maintained the place. You have lived here rent-free, Eleanor snapped. You have lived here while I paid the property taxes, while I paid for the new roof. And how do you repay me? By barring the doors to my grandchildren. Who are they? The voice came from the patio doors. It was Tessa. She was standing there in a shimmering gold dress, holding a balloon. She looked young, confused, and terrified. She looked from Grant to me, and then to Miles. Dad? Tessa asked, her voice trembling. Who are they? Why is everyone staring? Grant opened his mouth, but no words came out. He couldn't do it. He couldn't tell the truth. I am your sister. Tessa, I said softly. Tessa looked at me. She looked at the similarity in our chins, the shape of our eyes. I saw the realization hit her like a physical blow. She had lived 18 years thinking she was an only child, the center of a perfect universe, and now she realized the universe was a stage set. My sister? She whispered. But Dad said you were just some cousin who asked for money. He said you were a distant relative. He lied, Eleanor said. He lied to you, Tessa, just like he lied to Janet, just like he lied to himself. Eleanor walked over to the patio table where Grant had set his drink. She placed the leather briefcase on the white tablecloth. It was battered and scarred, a relic from a time when she ran her own business in a world of men. She clicked the latches open. Snap, snap. She pulled out a single document. It was crisp and legal-sized. This, Eleanor said, holding the paper up, is a notice to quit. Ray drafted it this morning. It states that your tenancy is conditional. It outlines the terms of behavior required to remain on this property. She slammed the paper down on the table. Condition number 1, Eleanor declared. No member of the Calloway bloodline will ever be turned away from this door again. Condition number 2, Natalie and Miles are moving in. Tonight? Tonight? Marlene gasped. But the party, the guests, where will they sleep? They will sleep in the guest suite, Eleanor said. The one you use for your painting studio. You can move your easel to the garage. You can't do that, Grant whispered. He looked small now. The Grand Patriarch had dissolved, leaving behind a frightened middle-aged man who was afraid of his mother. I can, Eleanor said. And if you argue with me, Grant, the next paper I pull out of this bag will be an eviction notice. And unlike you, I do not make idle threats. I will have the sheriff here by morning. She turned to the crowd. Enjoy the cake, she said to the stunned guests. It was expensive, I know, because I paid for it. Then she turned to me. Come, Natalie. Come, Miles. Let's get you inside. It is getting cold. She took Miles's arm and began to walk toward the French doors of the house. Ray followed, picking up the garment bags. I stood there for a second, feeling the adrenaline crash in my veins. Grant was standing next to me. He was staring at the notice on the table. He didn't look at Marlene. He didn't look at Tessa, who was crying silently by the door. He looked at me. His eyes were dark, filled with a mixture of hatred and calculation. He leaned in close, so close I could smell the scotch on his breath. What do you want? He whispered. It wasn't an apology. It was a negotiation. He thought this was a shakedown. He thought everyone operated on his level. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't fear him anymore. I will tell you inside, I said. This is a private family matter, and I walked away, leaving him standing in the ruin of his perfect party. The guest suite on the ground floor smelled of lemon polish and stale turpentine. Until 24 hours ago, this had been Tessa's painting studio. Now, the easels were stacked in the hallway, and 2 twin beds had been hurriedly pushed against the far wall. It was not perfect, but to me, it looked like a palace. I sat on the edge of the mattress, watching Miles. He was standing in front of a mahogany desk, his hand hovering over the surface. He did not touch it at first. He just stared at the wood grain, at the brass lamp, at the stack of textbooks we had retrieved from the trunk of the car. He looked like he was afraid that if he made contact, the furniture would dissolve into smoke. "It is real, Miles," I said softly. "It is solid." He pressed his palm flat against the wood. His shoulders dropped 3 inches. He pulled the chair out and sat down. He did not turn on the television. He did not check his phone. He opened his chemistry book, clicked his pen, and started to study. He sat there for 4 hours straight, drinking in the silence like it was water. He was not just studying for an exam. He was studying because for the first time in a month, he did not have to worry about the security guard at the library kicking him out. The next few days were a strange, quiet ceasefire. We lived in the house, but we existed in a separate ecosystem. Grant and Marlene moved through the upper floors like ghosts, avoiding the ground level whenever we were there. Eleanor had gone back to her assisted living facility to gather her things, promising to return permanently by the weekend, leaving Ray to check in on us every evening. I tried to build a routine. I ironed Miles's uniform in a laundry room that was larger than my old kitchen. I drove him to his shifts at Beancraft, and instead of waiting in the parking lot, I drove to the public library to use their high-speed internet. I applied for jobs. I sent out resumes with a new ferocity, knowing that I had a shower and a bed to come home to. Then, the first victory arrived. I was sitting in the garden, using the guest Wi-Fi. When my phone pinged, it was a notification from the bank. The unemployment claim had finally cleared. The back pay had hit my account. $3,400. I stared at the screen, tears pricking my eyes. It was not a fortune. It was barely enough to cover a deposit on a cheap apartment in this city. But it was oxygen. It meant I could buy Miles new shoes. It meant I could put gas in the car without counting pennies. It meant I was not drowning anymore. I was treading water. That afternoon, I received another message. This one was not from a bank. It was from a number I did not recognize. "I am sorry. I did not know. I honestly did not know." It was signed Tessa. I looked up at the second-floor window where I knew her bedroom was. I could have been angry. I could have hated her for the car she drove and the art studio she had occupied while my son slept in a Toyota, but I remembered her face at the party. She had looked shattered. She was just another prop in Grant's stage play, a girl raised on lies. "Thank you. Tessa," I typed back. "I know. Grant was a different story. He came to the guest suite on Tuesday night. He knocked once and entered without waiting for an invitation. He looked tired. The crisp arrogance from the party was gone, replaced by a rumpled, anxious energy. He stood by the door, refusing to fully step into the room, as if being in here compromised his status. "Natalie," he said, "I wanted to clear the air." I was folding laundry on the bed. I did not stop. "The air seems pretty clear to me. Grant, Eleanor clarified everything on Saturday." "Look, you have to understand the pressure I was under," he said, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Marlene is difficult. She has high standards. I was just trying to keep the peace. I didn't want to bring you into a hostile environment. I was trying to protect you." I stopped folding. I looked at him. "You were trying to protect me by leaving me on the street?" "I didn't think it was that bad," he said, shifting his weight. "I thought you were exaggerating. You have always been dramatic. Natalie, even as a kid." I laughed. It was a cold, short sound. "I am not dramatic, Dad. I am desperate. And you are not sorry you did it. You are sorry Eleanor found out." He stiffened. "I am trying to make this work. We have to live together now. I suggest you tell your son to keep his head down. Marlene is not handling this well." He was right. Marlene was not handling it well, but I did not realize how badly she was handling it until Thursday night. It was 2 a.m. I woke up because I was thirsty. The house was silent. I walked out of the guest suite and down the hallway toward the kitchen. I reached for the handle of the door that separated the guest wing from the main living area. It was locked. I frowned. It had never been locked before. I jiggled the handle. It was solid. I tried the other door, the one that led to the mudroom, locked. We were trapped in the suite. Then, the silence was shattered by a siren. Blue and red lights flashed against the sheer curtains. I ran to the window. A police cruiser was pulling into the driveway. My heart hammered against my ribs. I shook Miles awake. "Get up. Put your clothes on." "What is happening?" he asked, groggy and scared. "I don't know." We heard voices in the hallway. Loud, authoritative voices. Then, the door to our suite, the one that had been locked moments ago, was thrown open. Marlene stood there, wearing a silk robe, clutching her chest. 2 police officers stood behind her. "That is them!" Marlene cried, pointing a manicured finger at us. "They are squatters. I told them to leave days ago. They broke in through the side door. I do not feel safe in my own home." The officer, a tall man with a tired face, stepped forward. "Ma'am, do you live here?" I stood in front of Miles. "My name is Natalie Kelly. This is my father's house. My grandmother, Eleanor Calloway, gave us permission to be here." "She is lying!" Marlene shrieked. "She is a drug addict. Look at them. Do they look like they belong here? I want them removed. Now!" The officer looked at me. He looked at Miles, who was standing by the desk in his pajamas, holding his chemistry book like a shield. He looked at the neatly made beds. "Do you have proof of residency, ma'am?" the officer asked me. "I have a key," I said, reaching for the nightstand where I kept my mother's brass key. "And I have my uncle, Ray Calloway, who is the family attorney. You can call him." "Call him," Marlene yelled. "Call whoever you want. The owner is incompetent. She is in a home." The officer held up a hand to silence her. He looked at me. "Call your lawyer." I called Ray. It was 3 a.m, but he answered on the first ring. I put him on speaker. "Officer," Ray said, his voice sounding like gravel being crushed. "My name is Raymond Calloway. I represent the Eleanor Calloway Trust. If you remove those people from that house, I will have your precinct sued for unlawful eviction before the sun comes up. Grant and Marlene Calloway are tenants on notice. They have no authority to trespass anyone." The officer listened. He nodded. He looked at Marlene. "It seems this is a civil matter. Ma'am," he said, "we cannot remove them without a court order. If you feel unsafe, you are welcome to leave." Marlene turned a shade of purple I had never seen on a human being. She did not scream. She stared at me with a hatred so pure it felt like a physical burn. She turned on her heel and marched back upstairs. The police left. I locked the door from the inside this time. The next morning, Ray arrived. He did not bring pastries. He brought a thick file folder. We sat at the small table in the guest suite. Miles was at school. "It was not just a tantrum," Ray said, tapping the folder. "The police call was strategic. She wanted a police report. She wanted an official record stating that there was a disturbance involving you." "Why?" I asked. "Because she filed a petition yesterday," Ray said. "She has filed for emergency guardianship of Eleanor." My stomach dropped. "What?" "She claims Eleanor is suffering from advanced dementia." Ray explained. "She claims Eleanor is making reckless financial decisions, like kicking her son out and letting strangers move in. She is using the eviction notice as proof of Eleanor's mental decline. She is arguing that Eleanor is being manipulated by opportunistic relatives. That is you, Natalie." "But Eleanor is fine," I said. "She is sharper than any of us." "We know that," Ray said, "but the court does not. Marlene has found a doctor, some guy Grant plays golf with, who signed an affidavit stating Eleanor has shown signs of cognitive impairment. And that is not the worst part." Ray opened the folder and slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a photocopy of a document. "I found this in the county clerk's digital filings this morning." Ray said, "It is a power of attorney, dated 3 years ago. I looked at the signature at the bottom. It looked like Eleanor's signature, but it was slightly off. The slant was wrong. She is trying to use a dormant POA to seize control of the trust assets before the guardianship hearing," Ray said. "If this goes through, Marlene gets control of the bank accounts, she gets control of the house, She can legally evict you, cut off Eleanor's funds, and sell the property. Is it a forgery? I asked. I think so, Ray said. But proving it takes time, and we do not have time. The hearing is set for next Tuesday. I felt the cold creeping back in. We had won the battle at the party, but we were losing the war in the paperwork. So if she wins on Tuesday, I started. If she wins, Ray said, looking me in the eye, Grant becomes Eleanor's legal guardian. Marlene becomes the de facto manager of the estate. The notice to quit becomes void, and you and Miles will be on the street by Tuesday night, and this time, Grant will have a court order to back him up. I looked out the window at the perfectly manicured lawn. I thought of Miles studying at the mahogany desk. I thought of the $3,000 in my account that was supposed to be our restart money, not a legal defense fund. She is betting on Eleanor being too old to fight back, I said. She is betting on Eleanor cracking under pressure, Ray corrected. She is going to drag your grandmother onto a witness stand and try to make her look crazy. She is going to talk about Janet. She is going to talk about you. She is going to try to break her. I stood up. I walked to the stack of easels Marlene had left in the hall. Marlene forgot one thing, I said. What is that? Ray asked. She forgot that Eleanor Calloway has been waiting 20 years to tell the truth, I said. She thinks the witness stand is a trap. I think Eleanor is going to see it as a microphone. Ray smiled. It was a small, grim smile. We have 4 days to prepare. Get your suit ready. Natalie, we are going to court. Tuesday morning felt less like a day of judgment and more like the end of a very long, very dark winter. The courtroom was sterile, smelling of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Marlene sat at the plaintiff's table, wearing a suit that was too white, too crisp, looking like the victim of a tragedy she had invented. Grant sat beside her, staring at the table, refusing to look to his left where I sat with Ray. Miles and Eleanor, the hearing for emergency guardianship was supposed to be Marlene's victory lap. Her lawyer, a man with a shiny suit and a louder voice, painted a picture of Eleanor as a woman in rapid cognitive decline. He used words like confusion, vulnerability, and exploitation. He pointed at me as if I were a predator who had crawled out of the gutter to feast on the family fortune. Then, they called Eleanor to the stand. Marlene shifted in her seat, a small, triumphant smile playing on her lips. She expected the woman who walked up to the witness box to be frail. She expected her to stutter. She was wrong. Eleanor did not just walk, she marched. She took the oath with a voice that carried to the back of the room. When the judge asked her to state her name and date of birth, she did so. Then, she looked at the judge and added, "And for the record, Your Honor, I completed the Sunday crossword puzzle in 12 minutes this morning, in pen." The judge blinked, suppressing a smile. Noted. Mrs. Calloway? Marlene's lawyer tried to rattle her. He asked about her finances. He asked if she remembered signing the eviction notice. "I remember it perfectly," Eleanor said, leaning into the microphone. "I remember the date, I remember the time, and I remember exactly why I signed it. Because a man who lets his own grandson sleep in a Toyota Camry does not deserve to sleep in a King Louis XIV bed," the lawyer faltered. "Objection. Irrelevant. It goes to state of mind," Ray interjected calmly. "And we have evidence regarding the petitioner's credibility." Ray stood up. He didn't look like the black sheep of the family anymore. He looked like the executioner. He approached the bench with a tablet and a stack of documents. "Your Honor," Ray said, "the petitioner claims my client is incompetent. Yet, we have here a sworn affidavit from Dr. Eris Thorne, a leading geriatric neurologist, dated yesterday, confirming Eleanor Calloway scores in the 99th percentile for cognitive function for her age group. But more importantly, we have this." Ray played an audio file. It was grainy, but the voices were unmistakable. It was a recording from a notary's office, dated 3 years prior, the day Marlene claimed Eleanor had willingly signed a power of attorney. "Just sign the damn paper, Eleanor." Marlene's voice hissed on the recording. "Grant needs the loan. Stop being selfish. If you don't sign it, We are not driving you home." The courtroom went dead silent. Marlene's face drained of all color. "And finally," Ray continued, "we have the financial records. Grant Calloway claims he is the manager of the estate. He claims he has supported his mother." Ray dropped a heavy binder on the table. "These are 20 years of tax returns and bank statements," Ray said. "They show that Grant Calloway has never paid a single property tax bill. He has never paid a utility bill. He has never paid for a roof repair. In fact, the only financial transaction between him and his mother is a monthly transfer of $2,000 from her account to his. He is not the caretaker, Your Honor. He is the dependent." Grant shrank into his chair. He looked like a balloon that had been pricked. The illusion of the self-made man, the wealthy patriarch, evaporated in seconds. He was just a middle-aged man living on an allowance. The judge looked at the binder. He looked at Marlene, then at Grant. The disgust on his face was not professional. It was personal. "Petition denied," the judge said, slamming his gavel. "And counsel, I am referring this transcript to the district attorney's office to investigate potential elder abuse and fraud. Get out of my courtroom." It was over. We didn't leave immediately. Eleanor asked for a conference room. She had brought her own notary. Right there, on a scratched wooden table in the courthouse. She laid out a new set of documents. "This is the First Amendment to the Eleanor Calloway Living Trust," she said, uncapping her pen. She signed her name with a flourish. "The house is now in a protected trust for the benefit of Natalie Kelly," she announced. "I retain the right to live there until my death, after which it passes directly to her. Grant Calloway is removed as a beneficiary. Marlene Calloway is removed as a trustee." She turned to Miles. "And this," she said, sliding a check across the table, "is a separate educational trust. It covers 4 years of tuition at the university of your choice. You will not bust tables to buy books. Miles, you will study." Miles looked at the check. His hands were shaking. "Grandma, I can't." "You can," she said. "And you will." Then, Eleanor turned to Grant and Marlene, who were standing by the door, looking like they were waiting for a reprieve that was never coming. "You have 30 days, Eleanor said. "Ray has prepared the eviction order. If you are not out by noon on February 24th, the sheriff will remove you. And Grant?" Grant looked up, his eyes red. "Do not take the furniture," she said. "It belongs to the trust." We walked out of the courthouse into the bright afternoon sun. Tessa was waiting for us on the steps. She wasn't wearing her usual designer clothes. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, looking very small and very young. She had been crying. She walked up to us. She didn't look at her parents. She looked at me. "I am sorry," she sobbed. "I really didn't know. I believed them. I thought we were the good guys." I pulled her into a hug. She felt fragile. "It is not your fault. Tessa, you were just living the story they told you." "I don't want to go with them," she whispered. "I don't want to be like them." "Then don't be," Miles said. He stepped forward. "You can come sit with us. We are going to get coffee, the real kind." Tessa smiled through her tears. She let go of her parents' toxic legacy right there on the courthouse steps and walked with us. 3 weeks later, I sat in the lobby of Cedar Lane Studio. It was a new firm, smaller than Hawthorne and Wren, but with a vibrancy that felt like a heartbeat. The creative director shook my hand. "Your portfolio is impressive, Natalie," he said. "But your references? They are incredible. I have never seen a letter of recommendation like this." He was holding the letter from Miles's manager at Beancraft, which I had included by accident, and another one from a freelance client I had kept during the worst of the crisis. "We would like to offer you the senior designer position," he said. "Starting salary is $85,000. I took the job. I didn't stay in the mansion on Chestnut Hill. It was too big, too full of ghosts. Eleanor moved back in, happy to reclaim her space, with Ray checking on her daily. Miles and I stayed in the guest suite for 2 months until I saved enough for a deposit. We found a 2-bedroom apartment in the city. It has big windows and a balcony. It is not a mansion. It does not have a ballroom, but the lease has my name on it. The keys in my pocket belong to me. On moving day. I sent Grant a text message. He was living in a rented condo on the outskirts of town. His credit ruined. His reputation in tatters. Family is not a word you say. I wrote, "Family is what you do when the chips are down." I never got a reply. I didn't need one. That evening, Miles stood on our new balcony, looking out at the city lights. He was holding a mug of tea. His hands were healing. The burns were fading into pale scars. "You know, Mom," he said, turning to me, "I still pick up shifts at the coffee shop on weekends." "I know," I said. "Why?" He smiled, and he looked so much like my mother in that moment. "Because I make good coffee, and I am proud of it." My phone buzzed. It was a picture from Eleanor. She was sitting in her sunroom, drinking wine with Ray and Tessa. Underneath, she had typed one sentence: "This is what dignity looks like." I put the phone down and looked at my son. We had lost everything, and in the end, we had found the only thing that actually mattered. We found the truth, and the truth had set us free. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Morgan Revenge Stories. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment down below sharing your location and your thoughts on Grant's karma. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and smash the hype button to help this story reach even more people.